Hello and welcome, Libras. This is your Virgo season reading from the Oracle of the Feather Crown Tree. This reading incorporates a Western astrology wheel. The first house is on the left-hand side in the center, and the wheel goes counterclockwise. The center card is representing your heart space, or the center of your being where you can operate from. So that's just an additional card that I've incorporated into this system I've created for this reading. So let's start with that center card, and we'll see what we get intuitively throughout this reading for you. You seem to be in a very reflective, emotional space. You may be thinking about how your passions have led to some angry moments, and how that process also brings you, although difficult, an opportunity to grow from it. I don't necessarily see you in anger, but you're kind of looking back to some probably instances in the past where these moments have occurred, and you're really asking, in this present moment, as I decide my future, how can I learn from this to change the type of emotion that I'm processing, to get out of the pattern that I've been in? Because the way that you change your perception of what's going on will then change the emotion that's produced from it. So now, looking at your first house, I see you concerned about the family, concerned about being a mother figure, perhaps, and feeling a little bit disconnected from knowing how to do this, feeling like you're rooted in something else and that you're slow to learn how to be a mother. You may actually be feeling kind of envious of this, or overrun with this desire to know how to mother, to know how to nurture. And what comes more natural to you is something that's closer to something that feels far more archaic, far more in touch with a wisdom that precedes this idea of motherhood and caretaking. And you can't quite bridge the gap. The thing in between you is this kind of this pillar of truth, of understanding that there's something blocking you from getting there. It has a lot to do with the root chakra, of staying predominantly in that energy and not growing into the heart chakra as much. So you may just be more concerned with survival than understanding really how to give of your emotions and to experience more emotion than this survival thing. And this is in your position of how you're really showing up and appearing and acting in the world. Now I'm going to take a look at your second house. And again, I'm getting a strong sense of emotion that needs to pour through, emotion that needs to be acknowledged as wise, that is a feminine aspect that doesn't need to be feared, and that actually brings you a kind of wisdom that is different than this survival instinct. There's definitely a sense that you will grow by embracing the emotion and letting it help transform how you are insightfully processing your reality. There does seem to be an acknowledgement that there's something beyond you, a community beyond you, of people that maybe have mastered this quality that can show leadership to you and show you how to be stable and emotional at the same time, to make full use of your emotional spectrum so that it doesn't uproot you, so that you don't identify, if you're only really experiencing emotion from the root level, that it becomes that every situation is a call for, survival or death, through the emotional space. It can't be that destabilizing for you, that you're just going through cycles of death and rebirth through a singular type of emotion, which is usually fear in this area. So I really encourage you to seek some wisdom of people that can set good examples for you by their own mastery of emotion. I'm moving into, and that was in your house of value. So you're starting to see the value of experiencing other emotions, and that there's a type of currency going on there with that expands the type of currency that you're experiencing just through processing things through your root chakra. Okay, so your third house, this has more to do with communication and how you're kind of networking with those that are physically close to you. This card, again, is speaking of probably using a lot of anger in how you are communicating, in your body language and in the actual vibrations created through your speaking and in your thoughts, even determining this anger. You're doing this out of self-protection. Again, going back to the root chakra. This is a survival instinct, this fear and anger. And even though you may be smart, you may be seeing the need, even from an enlightened perspective, being able to see the whole picture. You understand the survival involved in situations, yet by choosing the anger, you're bringing in more fear, which is not necessarily an evolved way of dealing with emotions. They are more complex than rage, basically. I would definitely look at your childhood and see if you have a primary parent, especially the mother, that used rage to control and used fear to control, and see that this was not actually something to be honored, but was an act that showed their fear, showed their weakness, and that as we are evolving, that by doing this, it's going to make you appear kind of like a drama queen to a lot of people. Basically, it's going to be theatrical and not read as genuine emotion, not read as truly in the capacity of human communication. So it's going to make it difficult for others to engage with you if they don't want to deal with drama. Okay, so looking at your home in the fourth house, your ancestry, memory, I'm seeing actually a very loving, wise presence here in the home. There may be a couple, you may have a couple of children, you may actually have a set of twins here, that really rely on you, rely on your ability to be in tune with your emotions and know how to communicate with them through this. They may want to have you hear them in this way. And there seems to be a little a residue here of how you've been behaving, where they feel exceptionally vulnerable. And you also feel exceptionally vulnerable. This is not an image of empowerment. This is not an image of relaxation. There is an energy, often like we see in the cycle of abuse, where there's these moments of, after the rage and the anger and the disruption, there's this sort of sadness that comes in, and regret, I think is the word that I'm looking for. But there's such a strong bond between you and perhaps children, something in your immediate family here, that they're really suffering from this process of basically your emotional immaturity. Like you're not evolved in this area. And this may be, like I said, in your first house, why you can't quite grasp motherhood, because you're not grasping how to have command over the full spectrum of your emotions. Which, of course, look at the chakra system, look at the rainbow, the multitude outside of just the red zone that is available to work with the energies in all those areas to grow with. So now looking at your fifth house, which is really about your power out in the world and your ability to garner respect through that. I see that you have a very strong presence here, that you've been able to build a very solid foundation. It feels a little bit outdated though, and a little isolated from the environment that it's in. Even though it's intended to be part of that environment and to communicate with something, it's disassociated from it. It may be trying to communicate with something, another dimension, that isn't in the dimension that it's in. You may be a person that just is very high-minded, that has thoughts that seem otherworldly, that has ambitions, and you're motivated from information that really is coming from something that doesn't feel of this time, of this planet. And it may be difficult for you to actually engage with the mundane, the reality, the world that actually exists around you, and see the beauty in that. And even though that you're really strong, even though you're perceiving yourself as being the presence that needs to be within this community, it can be actually causing your whole community to feel a little bit stormy around you, a little bit unnerved, a little bit unstable, because you're not realizing how your presence is maybe intimidating, lacking the ability to really have rapport, lacking integration with the environment that you're in. And so, I would look to a way of processing mentally. I feel like the healing that can come through is taking the power of what you have access to in that mental space, and again, going into emotions and saying, how can I start blending the energy of emotions? Because it's a very powerful energy to master. And how can I use that now to imbue my reality with them and create harmony, create a more colorful reality, and lessen perhaps the polarity that you may be building through the lack of color, the lack of diversity of emotion that you're now perhaps exhibiting. Okay, so your 6th house, I consider this the house of daily routine and maintenance, like your health. Here I see you are kind of blissful, like you've really, for some reason I'm seeing you just sort of like, yeah, I'm owning like who I am. And it's almost like that ignorance is bliss, like you are not completely self-aware, like you're just sort of like, yeah, I've got my root chakra going on, I'm working from there, and you may have activated some of your sacral chakra too, so you might be feeling kind of creative, and this really is your being and where you're operating from and where your awareness is at. And you may have actually kind of taken on a lot of authority and feel like, you know, that you are enlightened, that you are knowledgeable, and that you have everything that you need. And yet there's all this stuff around you that you're not quite aware of. There's a hint of, you know, knowledge that can come through, like practices, taking like mushrooms, you know, the DMT that can be released in your system. There's other knowledge that can be archaic and, you know, use a lot of symbolism, mythology, history, herbal knowledge, things that you can, you know, just like all kinds of things in your environment that you're really not taking in. And instead there's just sort of this feeling of self-gratification, of feeling like you're really owning yourself, and really, for some reason, you know, that word narcissism comes in. I don't like to use that word because it's so cliche, but I do acknowledge that in these times, the way that we're evolving, there are these tendencies, and right now this is, you know, a tendency. So you may have some of this, and I know that that's really hard to hear, because if you're hearing that, you're going to be like, oh no, everyone else around me is the narcissist. Because if you are more in that tendency, you're not going to be able to perceive everything. You're going to have it flipped. So I highly encourage you to maybe reach out to people in your environment that you trust, in the maturity of knowing that regardless of what truth they give you, that you're not going to lash out and act against them, and see if you can get some feedback about your behavior, how you're processing information, your type of presence, who you are, and then look at your own self-perception in comparison to that, and think about growth there. Think about, can I actually look at this and acknowledge that maybe there is an opportunity here for me to grow as a human being, to better benefit not only myself, but my family and other people that deal with me in my environment. Okay, so now I'm looking at your 7th house of relationships, harmony, balance. And I'm seeing here this idea of you very much care about this area of your life. Like, this is an area that you wish to preserve. This is the energy that you find, that you hold with the most respect. that you honor the most. This ability to be the wise and loving, like the grandmother, the true caretaker of your society, of your family. This is the energy that you're comfortable in. And you have so much to give here. You know, this is an energy that goes beyond the seed. It goes beyond the flower to the actual fruit. You are the one that bears the fruit for those in your environment. So, you know, what I'm seeing here is such a beautiful intention that somehow in the process of integrating this intention into your day-to-day reality, it becomes misconstrued. And maybe that's because our society doesn't hold a structure for you to operate here. You know, you're forced to be, you know, seen as an equal. You're forced to not be understood, because there's no way that we honor that the energy that you have. And even if you can be honored in this way, we have such little regard, at least in our Western society, for our elders. You know, we have so much disrespect for them that once you reach sort of this pinnacle of achievement, you're just disregarded. And what you have isn't appreciated because we're so focused on youth. We're so focused on the flower, the seeding of new ideas, you know, the new, the exciting, the beauty of everything. So, you know, maybe that's a call to learn how to gently sort of gain that type of respect and find that appreciation. Now, as I move into the 8th house, I'm looking at, you know, your more of your subconscious, the areas that you can go deep, the mystery of life. And this is an astounding image. It's so powerful because it's that transitional space between death and rebirth. And then the title of this is Soul Retrieval, which for me speaks of emotional retrieval. So it's, and with this image of the sun behind it, there may have been an instance where you looked at the sun and gave it more power than the emotion. You emulate the sun. You've tried to be like the sun. The sun is strength, and yes, it is. It helps you so much, but it's, you know, only half of the whole of what you can be. And maybe in trying to be very masculine, you've lost so much of the power of your emotional range. You know, there are other things that come to mind here for retrieval. So for healing, there are vibrational therapies, there are, you know, sound therapies, color therapies, especially color, painting, light therapy, which would be tied into color, music. You know, I highly encourage you to engage in something there that could be very restorative to your soul. Okay, 9th house. This is what's sort of beyond you that you can grasp. It's wider than the circle of your consciousness right now. And it's definitely the power of the feminine, and the power of the feminine to bring this idea of prosperity to you. What I'm getting, especially in relation to this last card, is that maybe you've traded this idea of like prosperity being related to the masculine energy of being the sun, of going out and getting things. And you have forgotten what it's like to receive, that a huge part of what we do, a basic function of what we do in life is give and receive. And you may be a huge giver, but by doing that, you may come off as domineering, you may come off as controlling, and you need to find the power and the grace and the purpose of receiving. And that also is a form of prosperity for you. Okay, so 10th house, really your outer achievements, the pinnacle of what you can build in society. I'm almost getting emotional with this reading. For some reason, it's really touching me. But for me, the symbol that I'm seeing here that really integrates what I was just talking about is the sunflower. It's holding, the sun, the masculine, and the flower, more of the feminine energies here together. So maybe this could be a motif that you use in your environment that you can kind of center on. It could be something that you can meditate on to help you balance this energy that I've been speaking about. It looks like there are other things too, like I was saying, like those other elements that you're kind of disregarding in your environment. There's really this call to kind of organize more information, to access things that maybe you've kept away from yourself, that are locked in a way away from you. And it's not that you're not driven, like not focused. It's that you are focused and driven, and almost to the point of hyper focused, that you're not able to make use of other resources around you that could help your environment and yourself more. Okay, your 11th house. Hopes, wishes, dreams, rebellion, and humanitarian. So we are definitely seeing you sort of as a portal to understanding how to build, how to get to the ultimate purpose of life, how to get through the portals that lead you to the goal. And sometimes how to get through them multiple times, how to achieve goals. And you are very able to do this. Yet, there is something more complex. It's like you've been simplifying your reality, because in simplifying things, you're able to focus and you keep the distractions away. And what you may be disregarding as distraction is actually other systems of knowledge that are there to help you integrate more subtle knowledge than the basic knowledge that you've been working from, the basic skills to survive. There are more refined systems that are more complex, and you maybe just have been, denying that part of yourself. So maybe take on some studies, even take on something that you find challenging, that you find complex, and see if this helps take you out of the space of, hyper focus, duality, and brings you into more refined, more complex, more fractalized visions reality. And your 12th house. I see you here as kind of, so this is your house of personal transcendence, of cosmic consciousness. It can be, you know, what we consider the spiritual in this realm. So I feel like you're kind of disheveled here in a way that's sort of beautiful. It's like a bedhead type of thing. It's like you're not maybe perfect, but there's this beauty, there's this humanness in it that is kind of refreshing, that we identify with. It's like when you're used to seeing people with their makeup on and then they take it off and you're like, you know, we don't have to try to put on the mask all the time and try to, you know, be this idealized version that, you know, we created through the media machine, which then becomes part of the whole consumeristic society and that whole thing. So there's this beauty in being kind of wild and free. And I see that you haven't lost any of that ennobled sense of survival. You know, it almost has this medieval resonance to it. Like you really, through whatever, no matter how hard it gets, you will be the queen in this situation. And you've mastered that type of energy. But I now see you vulnerable in your heart space and your upper heart space and all of your higher chakras too. And you're allowing this sort of wildness, this just raw instinct that you've had to start to connect with these higher energies. Higher doesn't mean better. It's just part of the spectrum that you have access to be fully realized, to know all the notes that are possible that you can work with, you know, to have all of your resources. And you're taking in this energy, you're being vulnerable, you're allowing yourself to receive. And you're not fighting it. And it's like your whole system is getting rebooted. You're able to recharge, and you're in this process, you know, so you may find yourself not having mastered it, but there's this beautiful acknowledgement of being, you know, in this transformation that is actually helping you relax, is actually giving you the freedom to not worry about survival, the freedom to just experience, to not think so much, to not think in rational ways, to tune into things that are more vibratory, to experience energy just as energy, as wave, and not so much as structure and with the meaning and the hierarchy that we can put on things that we've attached meaning to, and how it fits into civilization and how it builds, and you know, all that stuff. So there's just this beautiful openness that I see you experiencing, and it's truly beautiful. And when I go back to that 4th house card, I get a little bit of echoing here of when you really embrace this process. You know, I hope that if you were or are experiencing some issues in the home space, especially with children, that by allowing yourself to transform this way, that situation will be able to gain from the enlightenment that you will be experiencing. So thank you for joining me. That again was your Virgo season reading, and I hope that you will join me next time too. You guys take really good care.